The wind carried whispers through the ruins of Shadowmere. Not the gentle murmur of autumn leaves, but something older. Something that remembered. It moved through the skeletal remains of stone towers and collapsed archways like a living thing searching. Always searching. Dr. Mara Winters stood at the edge of the valley, her breath forming white clouds in the October air. Below her, the ruins sprawled across the mountainside like broken teeth dark against the dying light. She'd driven 6 hours to reach this place. 6 hours of winding mountain roads in fading cell service, chasing a truth that everyone else had dismissed as fantasy. Her colleagues at the university had laughed. Her department head had called her obsessive. Her ex-boyfriend had called her delusional before walking out 3 months ago. They were all wrong. Mara adjusted her backpack and started down the slope. The path was overgrown, barely visible beneath a century of neglect. Thorns caught at her jacket. Loose stones skittered under her boots. But she'd come too far to turn back now. The first stars were emerging when she reached the outer wall. Up close, the ruins were more intact than satellite images suggested. The main gate still stood, though the massive wooden doors had long since rotted away. Carved wolves flanked the entrance, their stone eyes following her as she passed beneath. She switched on her flashlight. The beam cut through the gathering darkness, illuminating what had once been a grand courtyard. Stone foundations marked where buildings had stood. A well now dry and choked with debris. And beyond it all, rising from the center like a dark heart, the bloodstone altar. Mara's pulse quickened. This was it, the focal point of Shadowmere's power. The place where, according to legend, Luna Lorraine had made her final stand. She approached, slowly documenting everything with her camera. The altar was a perfect circle of black obsidian, roughly 10 feet in diameter. Runes covered its surface, ancient symbols that her research had barely begun to decode. They seemed to shimmer in her flashlight beam, though that had to be a trick of the polished stone. The temperature dropped as she drew closer. Her breath came faster now, each exhale a white plume that dissipated too quickly. The air itself felt different here, heavier, charged with something she couldn't name. Mara knelt beside the altar, running her gloved fingers along the carved symbols. A century of weathering should have erased them, but they remained crisp and clear as if freshly cut. Her academic training screamed impossibility. Her instincts whispered truth. She pulled out her notebook, began sketching the rune patterns. The light was fading fast. She'd have to work quickly if she wanted to document everything before the glove snagged on a broken edge of stone. A sharp crack. Pain lanced through her palm. Mara jerked back, watching dark blood well up through the torn fabric. She swore under her breath, pressing her other hand against the wound. Nothing serious, just a deep scratch, but it stung like fire. A single drop fell before she could stop it. It hit the altar stone with an audible sound, impossibly loud in the silence. The obsidian drank it down, and for a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the runes began to glow. Blue light, soft at first, then blazing brighter. The symbols ignited one by one, racing outward from where her blood had fallen and spreading across the entire surface of the altar in a cascading wave of ancient magic. The temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the stone, crackling as it formed intricate patterns that followed the glowing lines. Mara scrambled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be real. Legends and myths and academic theory. But not this. Never this. The light reached the altar's edge and exploded upward. A column of blue fire shot into the darkening sky, illuminating the entire valley in stark, frozen clarity. The ruins stood revealed in all their glory, and ruined shadows, stark and deep, every stone thrown into sharp relief. And in that light, Mara saw something else. A figure. He stood at the far edge of the courtyard where the shadows were deepest. Tall, impossibly tall, broad shoulders draped in what looked like fur and ancient leather. Long dark hair that moved in a wind she couldn't feel. And eyes. Even at this distance, even through the blazing blue light, she could see his eyes. They glowed like winter stars. He took a step forward. The sound of his boot on stone echoed like a funeral bell. Mara couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. He crossed the courtyard with a terrible fluid grace, moving through the pillar of light as if it were nothing more than morning mist. The blue flames clung to him, outlining his massive frame, making him look like something carved from shadow and ice and barely contained violence. When he spoke, his voice was ruins and grief and 100 years of silence. Lorraine. The name fell into the space between them like a stone into still water. You came back. You promised you would come back. He stopped 10 feet away, and Mara could finally see him clearly. He was a man, just a man, except nothing about him was ordinary. His face was all harsh angles and brutal beauty, weathered by time and sorrow. A thick scar cut from his temple, down across his jaw, a white line against skin that looked like it had been carved from storm clouds. His hair was black as the altar stone falling past his shoulders in heavy waves. But it was his eyes that held her captive. In the dying light of the altar's glow, they were the color of a frozen lake under a winter moon. Ancient, knowing, devastated, and fixed on her with a recognition that made her soul ache. And then, I'm not, Mara's voice cracked. She tried again. I'm not whoever you think I am. He flinched as if she'd struck him. The devastation in his eyes deepened into something worse. Confusion, disbelief, a hope so old it had turned to ash now crumbling completely. Your voice. He took another step closer. It's different and wrong. I'm Dr. Mara Winters. I'm a historian from You Have Her Face. His voice was barely a whisper now, rough with emotion. Her scent. The altar recognized your blood. But you're not. He stopped, closing his eyes as if in physical pain. You don't remember me. I've never been here before. I came to study the ruins to prove that Shadowmere existed, that the massacre was real, but I don't know you. I don't know any Lorraine. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed. The desperate hope was gone, replaced by a terrible, dangerous focus. He studied her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve, his gaze moving over her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. What year is it? He asked suddenly. What? The year, tell me. It's 2024. Something cracked in his expression. Not quite a laugh, but close. A sound that held no humor at all. A century. It's been a full century. He looked past her toward the still glowing altar. She said she would return. She promised. But not like this. Never like this. The blue light was fading now, the runes dimming back to ordinary stone. The temperature began to rise, though it remained far colder than the October evening had any right to be. Mara's scientific mind was screaming at her to run, to flee this impossible situation, but her body refused to obey. Some deeper instinct kept her rooted in place. This man, this creature, whatever he was, he could have hurt her by now if he wanted to. He moved like a predator, stood like a king, but the emotion in his eyes was all too human. Grief, the kind that had nowhere left to go. Who are you? She asked quietly. He turned back to her, and for the first time she saw him truly smile. It was a terrible thing, full of sorrow and self-mockery. I am Kieran Ashford, Alpha of Shadowmere, mate to Lorraine of the Silver Moon, and I have been dead for 100 years waiting for a promise to be kept. The words should have sounded insane. Instead, they fell into place with the weight of absolute truth. The massacre, Mara breathed. The records say everyone died. The entire pack killed in a single night. Everyone did die. Kieran's eyes never left hers, except me. She wouldn't let me die. He led her deeper into the ruins, moving with the easy confidence of someone who knew every stone by heart. Mara followed because she didn't know what else to do. Her academic training, her rational mind, everything she'd built her life on demanded she run. But her historian's curiosity, that driving need to know, to understand, kept her feet moving forward. They entered what had once been a great lodge. The roof was mostly intact here, supported by massive timber beams that somehow hadn't rotted. Kieran moved through the debris-strewn hall with barely a glance, heading toward a massive stone hearth that dominated one wall. He knelt and, with movements that spoke of long practice, began building a fire. Mara watched, still too stunned to speak, as he arranged the wood with efficient precision. When he finished, he didn't reach for matches or a lighter. He simply held his palm over the kindling. Blue flames sparked to life in his hand. Mara's gasp echoed in the empty hall. The flame looked identical to the light that had erupted from the altar, that same ethereal blue that belonged in dreams, not reality. Kieran lowered it to the wood, and natural orange fire caught, spreading warmth and light through the cold space. He sat back on his heels, staring into the flames. Lorraine's magic. It still protects me. From fire, from time, from death itself. Though I've spent a century wishing it didn't. That's not possible, Mara whispered. Nothing about this is possible. Yet here we are. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. You're cold. Sit. I won't harm you. She shouldn't trust him. She knew that. But she also knew with a certainty she couldn't explain that he was telling the truth. Slowly, carefully, she moved to the fire and sank down onto what looked like an old fur spread across the stone floor. The warmth was immediate and welcome. She hadn't realized how cold she'd become. Tell me about her, Mara said. About Lorraine. Kieran was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. The fire crackled between them, sending shadows dancing across the ancient stone walls. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, lost in memory. She was light given form, power wrapped in gentleness. The first moon-blessed Luna in 5 generations. He paused, his jaw tightening. And she was mine, my mate chosen by fate itself. When we met, the bond was instant, absolute. She was 22, I was 30. We had 5 years together before they came. The Iron Fang clan, Mara said, the pieces clicking into place. The records say they attacked without provocation. The records lie. Kieran's voice went cold, hard as stone. They came for her, for what she represented. A Luna with moon magic that strong threatened the balance of power in the territories. The Iron Fang Alpha Garrison Blackwater feared what our pack could become. So he gathered an army and burned us to ash. He stood abruptly, pacing to the empty window. His silhouette was stark against the night sky beyond. It happened on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. They came like cowards, overwhelming us with numbers. For every wolf we killed, 3 more took their place. We fought for hours. The snow ran red, the air choked with smoke and death. Mara's throat tightened. She'd read the clinical accounts in historical records, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it was different. The pain in his voice made it real in a way no archived document ever could. I found her at the altar, Kieran continued. Garrison had her there, a silver blade to her throat. She wasn't afraid. She looked at me and smiled. Then she spoke, not with her voice, but directly into my mind through our bond. The last words she ever said to me. He fell silent. Mara waited, barely breathing. He cannot kill what is eternal. I will come back to you. I will always come back. Live for me, my love. Wait for me. The words hung in the cold air like a benediction, like a curse. She gathered all her power, every drop of magic in her blood, and she released it, not to fight them, not to escape. She anchored her soul to this land, to me, binding us together across the veil of death. The explosion threw them back, shattered their silver weapons, seared the runes into the altar stone. And it chained me here, immortal, trapped, waiting. Kieran turned to face her, and the agony in his eyes was a living thing. I can't age, can't die, can't leave these ruins. I've tried, gods know I tried in those first years. I wanted to follow her. But her magic holds me like iron chains. I can only wait for her return, as she made me promise. A century, Mara Winters. I've been alone here for a full century. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Mara's mind raced, trying to process what she was hearing. Magic, immortality, a binding curse born from love and desperation. Every rational part of her rejected it, but she'd seen the altar's light, seen the blue flame in his palm, felt the wrongness in the air, the weight of something ancient and powerful that defied natural law. And she looked like his dead mate. Where is Lorraine's body? She asked quietly. Was she buried here? There was no body. Kieran's voice was hollow. When her magic exploded, she simply vanished. Ash on the wind. Nothing left but the echo of her promise. He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, dropping to one knee before her. Mara's heart stuttered. Up close, he was overwhelming. The size of him, the intensity in those strange glowing eyes, the barely leashed power that rolled off him in waves. May I? He asked, his hand hovering near her face. She should say no, should pull back. Instead, she found herself nodding. His fingers touched her cheek, gentle, despite their obvious strength. They were cold, so cold it almost burned. But beneath that chill, she felt a current of warmth, like embers banked deep. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, tracing the line of her jaw with a tenderness that made her throat ache. You have her face, he whispered, the exact shape, the curve of your brow, the line of your nose, even the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. But your eyes. He leaned closer, studying her. Hers were silver, like the moon she drew her power from. Yours are brown, Mara supplied, her voice barely audible. Human. He said it not as an insult, but as a puzzle, a tragedy he couldn't quite comprehend. You're completely human. No wolf, no magic. Just her face on a stranger's soul. His hand dropped away, and Mara felt the loss of that touch like a physical thing. He stood, putting distance between them again, his broad shoulders rigid with tension. I don't understand, he said, and for the first time he sounded lost. Not the powerful alpha, not the immortal warrior, just a man confronting something he couldn't fight. The altar recognized your blood. That should be impossible unless you carry her essence, unless you are her reborn. But you're not. I would know. The mate bond would snap back into place if your soul was hers. Instead, there's just emptiness. Mara's mind was working frantically. There had to be a logical explanation. There always was. Coincidental resemblance, stress hallucinations, some elaborate historical reenactment. No. The altar light had been real. His touch had been real. The impossible cold of his skin, the blue flame in his palm, the weight of ancient magic saturating this place. She couldn't explain it away, but maybe she could understand it. Did Lorraine have any family, she asked? Sisters, brothers, anyone who might have survived? Kieran went very still. When he turned to look at her, something new flickered in his eyes. Not hope, not yet, but the faint shadow of possibility. She had a twin sister, Isora. His voice gained urgency. Younger by mere minutes, Isora fled when the attack began. Lorraine made her run, made her take the children and escape. She was the only adult from our pack who survived. Where did she go? I don't know. The curse won't let me leave to search. I've waited hoping she would return, but... He gestured helplessly. A century is a long time. She must be dead now. They all must be. Mara's pulse was racing now, pieces clicking into place with dizzying speed. If Isora survived, she could have had children. Grandchildren. Great-grandchildren. If she and Lorraine were identical twins, the bloodline would carry the resemblance. Kieran's eyes widened. Gods, you're not her reborn. You're her blood, descended from Isora's line. They stared at each other across the firelit space, the revelation hanging between them like a physical thing. It made sense. Horrible, wonderful, impossible sense. Genetic heritage explaining the identical face. The altar responding to Lorraine's bloodline, even generations removed. The lack of a mate bond because Mara wasn't Lorraine's soul, just her family's echo. I need to see her things, Mara said suddenly. If Lorraine kept journals records, anything that might mention what happened to Isora, where she went. The Luna's sanctuary, Kieran interrupted. It's intact. She kept everything there. He was already moving toward the door. Mara scrambled to follow her exhaustion, forgotten in the surge of academic excitement. This was what she did. This was what she was good at. Research, investigation, finding truth in fragments of the past. If she was Lorraine's descendant, there would be proof. There had to be. The Luna's sanctuary was smaller than the Great Lodge, but infinitely more personal. As Kieran pushed open the heavy wooden door, Mara's breath caught. Unlike the ruins outside, this room looked almost lived in. Dust covered everything, yes, but beneath it, the space was perfectly preserved. Shelves lined the walls filled with glass bottles, clay jars, bundles of dried herbs. A work table dominated the center, its surface covered with ancient charts of the stars, a grinding stone, and several leather-bound books. In the corner stood a simple bed with a fur coverlet, and on the far wall above a small hearth hung a portrait. Mara crossed the room slowly, her eyes locked on the painting. The woman depicted there could have been her twin. Same face, same features, though the eyes were indeed silver-white, luminous, and otherworldly. Her dark hair was longer, braided with white flowers. She wore a dress of pale fur and silver thread, and around her neck hung a moonstone pendant that seemed to glow with its own light. I commissioned it the winter before she died, Kieran said softly from the doorway. I wanted to capture her forever. She's beautiful, Mara whispered. She was everything. The grief in those two words was bottomless. Mara tore her gaze from the portrait and turned to the books on the table. Her fingers itched to touch them to explore, but she hesitated. May I? Kieran nodded. Everything in this room was hers. If you're her blood, then it belongs to you as much as to her memory. Carefully, reverently, Mara opened the first journal. The pages were yellowed but intact, covered in elegant handwriting. She skimmed quickly, looking for any mention of Isora. There a passage dated 3 months before the massacre. Isora grows restless. She feels the tension in the territories the way the other packs watch us with hungry eyes. I've told her not to worry, that Kieran's strength will keep us safe. But late at night, when the moon is dark and I cannot draw on her light, I feel it too. The storm gathering on the horizon. I've made Isora promise that if violence comes, she will take the cubs and run. She argues, says she'll fight beside us. But she doesn't understand. She's not bound by a mate bond. She can still escape. She must escape. Someone has to survive to remember us. Mara's hands trembled as she turned the page. More entries, increasingly dark in tone. Lorraine had known. She'd known the attack was coming and had planned for her sister's survival. Here, Mara breathed. She sent Isora east, to the human territories where wolves rarely ventured. Told her to hide among humans, to never shift to live as one of them until it was safe. That would explain why I never found trace of her, Kieran said. He'd moved closer, reading over Mara's shoulder. If she integrated into human society, suppressed her wolf, She'd be invisible. Mara flipped through more pages searching. Then near the back of the journal she found it. A folded piece of paper separate from the bound pages tucked between the last entries. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. It was a family tree drawn in Lorraine's careful script. At the top, Lorraine and Isora twins born under the winter moon. Below Lorraine's name, a single line connecting to Kieran's. Below Isora's name, question marks. But on the back of the paper someone else had written. The ink was different, darker, the handwriting shakier, but still readable. Lorraine's line continues. Isora to daughter Rhiannon, to granddaughter Moira, to great-granddaughter Catherine. We carry your face, sister. We remember. The last name had been added in different ink, fresher, Catherine to daughter Mara. The paper fell from Mara's numb fingers. That's my mother's name, she whispered. Catherine. She died when I was 16. Car accident. She never told me. Never said anything about being descended from wolves. Kieran picked up the paper, studying it with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. 4 generations. Isora lived long enough to see her great-granddaughter born, then someone, probably your grandmother, Moira, added your mother's name. And now you. He looked up at her, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. It wasn't the desperate hope from before. It was something more complex. Grief and wonder in a terrible, fragile possibility. You're her family, he said, the only living connection to Lorraine left in this world. Mara's mind was reeling. Her mother descended from wolves, her great-great-grandmother Isora, who'd fled a massacre and hidden among humans for the rest of her life. And her carrying the face of a Luna who died a century ago, walking into the one place that Luna's magic still held dominion. The altar, she said suddenly. It responded to my blood because it recognized the family line. Not reincarnation, heredity. Yes, Kieran's voice was rough. But that means... He stopped, his jaw clenching so hard she could see the muscle jump beneath his scar. What does it mean? Her binding spell. She anchored it to her bloodline, not just to her soul. She must have known Isora would survive, would carry on the family. The magic was meant to wait not for Lorraine's rebirth, but for her descendants' return. The implications hit Mara like a physical blow. You're saying the curse can be broken by me? Perhaps, I don't know. The magic is old, complex. But yes, your blood might be the key. He turned away, his shoulders rigid. You should leave. Go back to your life, your research, your world. This isn't your burden to bear. You don't want me to try. I want... His voice cracked. He took a breath, steadied himself. I've waited 100 years. I can wait longer. I won't trap you here out of my own desperate need to finally die. Mara stared at his back, at the proud set of his shoulders, the careful distance he maintained. He was giving her an out. Freedom. The chance to walk away from this impossible situation and return to her normal, rational life. She should take it, should run as far and fast as she could from ancient curses and immortal wolves and magic that defied every law of nature she'd ever studied. But when she opened her mouth, different words emerged. I'm a historian, she said quietly. My entire life's work has been dedicated to uncovering the truth about Shadowmere, to proving that what happened here was wrong, that your pack didn't deserve what was done to them. And now I find out I'm descended from the one who survived, that I carry the bloodline of the woman whose magic has kept you prisoner for a century. She moved closer, circling around until she could see his face. Those winter-bright eyes watched her with barely controlled emotion. I'm not walking away from this, Kieran Ashford. Not from the truth. Not from you. She took a breath. I need to understand what happened here. I need to know if there's a way to break the curse. And I need... She hesitated, then finished honestly. I need to know who I really am, where I came from. Give me 30 days. Let me study Lorraine's journals, research the magic, explore the ruins. If I can find a way to free you, I will. And if I can't, at least I'll know I tried. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then slowly Kieran reached out. His cold fingers touched her cheek again, just for a moment. 30 days, he agreed. But know this, Mara Winters. You owe me nothing. You are not responsible for choices made a century before you were born. Whatever you discover, whatever you decide when those 30 days end, I'll accept it. Even if that means watching you leave and returning to my solitude. His words were noble, but the desperate hope in his eyes told a different story. He was already attached, already seeing in her the ghost of the woman he'd lost. And Mara, despite every rational objection her mind could raise, felt the pull of it too. Not love, not yet, but connection, understanding. The recognition of one lonely soul reaching out to another. She'd come to Shadowmere seeking truth about the past. She hadn't expected to find her own history written in its stones. The first week passed in a blur of research and discovery. Kieran provided everything she needed, a room in the Great Lodge, supplies from the surprisingly well-stocked stores he'd maintained over the years, and unlimited access to Lorraine's sanctuary. He kept his distance, giving her space to work, but she always felt his presence. A shadow in the doorway, a figure watching from the courtyard below. Protecting her, she realized, even from himself. The journals were revelatory. Lorraine had documented everything: the politics between packs, the rising tensions, her own growing powers as moon-blessed Luna. She'd been brilliant, compassionate, and desperately aware of the danger her existence posed to the fragile balance of power in the territories. Mara learned about the mate bond, that mystical connection that formed between true pairs. How it allowed wolves to sense each other's emotions, communicate without words, feel each other's pain and joy as if it were their own. Lorraine had described it as two souls recognizing they were always meant to be one. She learned about moon magic, the rare gift that appeared in Luna bloodlines when the goddess herself blessed a birth. Only 1 in 5 generations, if that. Lorraine could heal with a touch, could see threads of fate, could draw power directly from moonlight itself. That power had made Shadowmere the strongest pack in the Northern Territories, and it had painted a target on Lorraine's back. Garrison Blackwater hadn't attacked out of random cruelty. He'd been afraid. Afraid that Shadowmere's power would grow unchecked. Afraid that other packs would ally with them. Afraid of losing his own dominance. So he'd organized a coordinated strike, convincing multiple packs that Lorraine was a threat to them all. The massacre hadn't been one clan's violence. It had been a collective decision sanctioned by what passed for pack law in those days. Murder disguised as politics. Mara's academic detachment crumbled as she read. These weren't abstract historical figures anymore. They were people, her family. Wolves who'd loved and lived and died terribly, their home burned to ash, their memories deliberately erased. And only Kieran remained to remember them. She found him on the 8th day, sitting in the Great Hall, staring at nothing. The sun was setting, painting the broken windows in shades of gold and red. He didn't turn when she entered, but she knew he heard her. "I've been reading about the binding spell," she said, sitting down across from him. Lorraine's ritual was complex. It didn't just anchor you to this place. It anchored you to the promise of bloodline continuation. "Yes," his voice was distant, "but there's something I don't understand. The spell should have ended when Isora died, when the bloodline living memory of Lorraine ended. Yet it persisted through 4 more generations. Because bloodline wasn't the only anchor." Kieran finally looked at her, and the sorrow in his eyes was ancient. It was love, specifically my love for her. As long as I still loved her, as long as I still waited, the magic held. She bound me not to her blood, but to my own heart. Mara's throat tightened. "That's cruel." He smiled without humor. "Yes, but she didn't mean it that way. She thought she'd return within years, not centuries. She thought I'd wait a decade at most before her soul found its way back. She didn't know." His voice cracked. "She didn't know I'd be alone for so long. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'd wait 1,000 years more if it meant even one more day with her." The words hung in the air between them. Mara wanted to say something, anything to ease his pain, but what comfort could she offer? She was a reminder of what he'd lost, wearing a dead woman's face like a mask. "Thorn Blackwater is coming," Kieran said abruptly. Mara blinked at the non sequitur. "Who I am, Garrison's grandson, current alpha of Iron Fang clan. My scouts reported movement on the eastern border yesterday. He'll be here by morning." "Scouts, I thought you were alone." "I am, but the land itself watches for me. Lorraine's magic pervades every stone, every tree. I feel it when something enters the territory. And I know Thorn's scent from his grandfather's blood." The way he said it, casual and cold, sent a chill down Mara's spine. "What does he want?" "You." Kieran's eyes found hers. "News of your arrival has spread. Whispers carry fast in the wolf world, even to those of us who live outside it. He'll have heard that someone awakened the altar, that a woman bearing Lorraine's face walks Shadowmere's ruins. He'll want to see for himself." "Why?" "Because if you're real, if you're truly bloodline, then everything changes." He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. "The curse that binds me was created by Lorraine's magic. If you carry that magic in your blood, even dormant, even as just potential—" "I could break it," Mara finished, "or strengthen it, or twist it into something new. The point is, you're a variable in a century-old equation, and Thorn Blackwater is too smart not to investigate." Mara's mind raced. She'd been so focused on the history, the research, the academic puzzle, that she hadn't considered the modern implications. That wolves still existed out there beyond these ruins. That pack politics and territorial struggles continued in the present day, just hidden from human eyes. What should I do? That depends. Kieran stood moving to the window. His silhouette was stark against the dying light. Do you trust me? I... Mara hesitated. She barely knew this man, this creature. Everything logical screamed she shouldn't trust him. But in the 8 days she'd been here, he'd been nothing but honest, restrained, respectful, giving her space and freedom even when she could see the desperate loneliness in his eyes. Yes, she said, I trust you. He turned and something fierce blazed in his winter-bright eyes. Then stay behind me tomorrow. Let me handle Thorn. Don't let him manipulate you. Don't let him make you doubt. He'll try to twist this situation to his advantage. That's what Blackwaters do. How do you know? Because he's Garrison's grandson, and Garrison taught him that power matters more than honor, that the strong make the rules and the weak submit. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. I won't let him hurt you. I won't let him use you as a pawn in whatever game he's playing. You're under my protection now, bloodline or not. Anyone who wants to touch you goes through me first. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead, Mara felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Safety, security, the knowledge that someone would stand between her and danger without hesitation. She stood crossing the space between them. Kieran tensed as she approached, but didn't back away. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. The curse might have stopped his aging, but it hadn't completely frozen him. Time marked him in subtle ways, 100 years of solitude etched into his features. Thank you, she said quietly, for protecting me, for giving me space to figure this out, for not expecting me to be her. You're not her. His voice was rough. I know that now. You're Mara Winter's historian and academic and far too brave for your own good. You're her family, yes. You carry her face, but you're your own person. He paused, and I find myself wanting to know that person. Not as a replacement, not as an echo, just as you. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and honest. Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous territory. Getting emotionally entangled with an immortal wolf bound by ancient magic, all while wearing the face of his dead mate. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see Lorraine's ghost looking back. She saw recognition of a different kind. Two people who understood loneliness. Two souls who'd spent their lives searching for truth in different ways. I'd like that, she whispered. Kieran's hand rose, hovering near her face. She nodded permission. His cold fingers cupped her cheek, and this time when she felt the spark, she understood what it was. Not magic, not the mate bond resurrecting itself, just connection, simple and human and real. When Thorn comes, Kieran said softly, remember that you get to choose. Not him, not me, not destiny or bloodline or ancient promises. You choose what happens next. What if I don't know what to choose? Then we figure it out together. The last light of day died behind him, and in the gathering darkness, Mara could swear his eyes glowed brighter. Tomorrow would bring complications, politics and power plays, and a rival Alpha with his own agenda. But tonight, in this moment, she stood in the ruins of Shadowmere with a century-old wolf and felt more at home than she ever had in her entire life. The irony wasn't lost on her. Thorn Blackwater arrived with the dawn. Mara woke to Kieran's voice outside her window. Stay inside, let me speak with him first. She rushed to look out. Below in the courtyard, 3 wolves stood in human form. 2 were clearly guards, large and intimidating in tactical clothing that looked far too modern for this ancient place. But it was the man in the center who captured her attention. Thorn Blackwater was tall and lean-built like a blade. He had hair the color of sun-bleached bone and eyes of startling ice blue that swept the ruins with calculating precision. He wore expensive clothes, a dark coat that probably cost more than Mara's car, and moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. He was handsome in a cold, aristocratic way, and when his gaze found Kieran standing alone before the Great Lodge, his smile was all teeth and no warmth. Kieran Ashford, Thorn's voice carried clearly in the morning air. The ghost of Shadowmere. I'd heard the rumors, but I confess I doubted. Yet here you stand as immutable as these ruins. Thorn, Kieran's tone was flat, offering nothing. You're trespassing. Am I? I was under the impression Shadowmere was neutral territory, a historical site abandoned and forgotten. No pack claim has been filed in a century. My pack claim never ended. I'm still Alpha here. Of what stones and memories? Thorne's smile widened. Come now, Kieran. Let's not play games. I'm not here to challenge your territory. I'm here about the woman. Mara's pulse jumped. She moved closer to the window, staying in shadow, but desperate to hear every word. What woman? Kieran's voice went dangerously soft. Don't insult me. Thorne took a step forward. His guards tensed, but he waved them back. The altar's awakening was felt across 3 territories. That kind of magic signature doesn't happen by accident. Someone with power activated it. Someone with bloodline ties to this place. I want to meet her. No, that's not your decision to make. She's under my protection. She's a variable in a century-old curse, and you know it. Thorne's expression turned serious. Listen to me, Ashford. Whatever you think is happening here, it's bigger than your personal tragedy. If Lorraine's bloodline has returned, if there's even a chance that ancient magic can be reactivated, the Council needs to know. They need to assess the threat. Threat, Kieran's voice dropped to a growl. She's a human woman, a historian. She poses no threat to anyone. Human, are you certain? Have you tested her blood, verified her heritage? Thorne's eyes gleamed. Or are you so desperate for your dead mate's return that you'll accept any pretty face that resembles her? The words hung in the air like poison. Mara could see Kieran trembling, his control fraying. She needed to intervene before this turned violent. She was halfway down the stairs before she'd consciously decided to move. That's enough. Both men turned as she emerged from the Great Lodge. Mara kept her spine straight, her expression calm even as her heart hammered with fear. She wasn't stupid. She could feel the danger radiating from both of them, predators circling each other with barely restrained violence. But she was tired of being talked about like she wasn't there. Thorne's eyes widened fractionally when he saw her. She watched him take in her face, comparing it to whatever image he'd built from descriptions and legends. His expression shifted through surprise, calculation, and something that might have been genuine awe. Gods, he breathed. The resemblance is remarkable. Dr. Mara Winters, she said, keeping her voice steady. And you're right, I'm Lorraine's descendant. Her twin sister I saw as line 4 generations removed. I activated the altar accidentally when I cut my hand on the stone. I'm here researching the Shadowmere massacre for my doctoral thesis. That's all. That's all. Thorne's laugh was sharp. You activate century-old binding magic and think it's incidental. I didn't say incidental, I said accidental. There's a difference. She moved to stand beside Kieran, not behind him, claiming her own space. What do you want, Mr. Blackwater? Thorne, please. And what I want is simple. Verification. Proof that you are who you claim to be. The Council will require it before making any decisions about what happens next. The Council has no authority here, Kieran interjected. Actually, they do. Thorne's expression hardened. When magic of this magnitude resurfaces, when a bloodline thought extinct potentially returns, it becomes pack business. Shadowmere's fall created a power vacuum that took decades to stabilize. If that vacuum is about to be filled again, I'm not trying to claim territory, Mara interrupted. I'm not trying to rebuild a pack or restart any political conflicts. I just want to understand my family's history. And break his curse. The question fell like a stone. Mara and Kieran exchanged glances. If possible, she admitted. He's been imprisoned for a century. That's long enough. Is it? Thorne moved closer and Mara understood why Kieran had warned her about manipulation. The man's voice was silk over steel, reasonable and dangerous in equal measure. Consider what happens if you succeed. An immortal alpha bound to no laws but his own freed to walk the world again. The lone survivor of a massacre nursing a century of grief and rage. What do you think he'll do? Dr. Winters retire quietly or seek revenge on the bloodlines that destroyed everything he loved? Mara's breath caught. She hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't considered that breaking the curse might unleash something terrible. I would never, Kieran started, but Thorne cut him off. Wouldn't you? Your mate was murdered. Your pack was slaughtered. You've had 100 years to dwell on it, to let that hatred fester. Tell me honestly, Ashford. If you were free, would you let it go? Would you forgive? The silence that followed was deafening. When Kieran finally spoke, his voice was ice. Your grandfather was Garrison, the man who gave the order to burn Shadowmere, the man who held a blade to Lorraine's throat. So no, I have not forgotten, and I won't pretend I've forgiven. Thorne's smile was sad, almost sympathetic. You see, this is why the Council must be involved. I'm not your enemy, Kieran. I'm trying to prevent another war. He turned to Mara. Come with me, voluntarily. Submit to the council's verification process. Let them examine your blood, confirm your heritage, assess any dormant magic you might carry. It'll take less than a week. Then you'll be free to return here, and we can discuss next steps like civilized beings, rather than, he gestured at the ruins. This. Absolutely not, Kieran snarled. But Mara's mind was racing. Thorne's arguments made sense, much as she hated to admit it. She was a variable in a complex equation. Her blood might hold the key to breaking ancient magic, but it might also pose unknown risks. If she wanted answers, real answers, she'd need resources beyond what Kieran could provide in these isolated ruins. And there was something else, something in Thorne's eyes when he'd mentioned his grandfather Garrison. Not pride. Regret. Shame if I refuse, she asked quietly. Then I return to the council and report that Kieran Ashford is harboring a potential threat, that he's using Lorraine's descendant for his own purposes. And they'll send an enforcement team. Thorne's expression was grave. I don't want that, Dr. Winters. Enforcement teams don't negotiate. They eliminate problems. I'm offering you a peaceful alternative. You're offering me a cage disguised as cooperation. I'm offering you protection. From the council, from other packs who'll hear about this, and yes, from him. He gestured at Kieran. You don't know what he's capable of, what any of us are capable of when desperate. Mara looked at Kieran. His face was a mask of barely controlled rage, his eyes blazing with that inner light. She could see him calculating weighing options, preparing for violence if necessary. He'd fight Thorne here and now if she asked, would probably win too. But at what cost? I need to speak with Kieran alone, she said. Give us 5 minutes. Thorne considered, then nodded. 5 minutes. We'll wait in the courtyard. He retreated, his guards following. Mara grabbed Kieran's arm and pulled him back toward the great lodge out of earshot. Don't even think about it, he growled the moment they were alone. I won't let him take you. It's not your decision to make. The hell it isn't. Your bloodline, your family to Lorraine, which makes you pack to me. I protect pack. I'm not your pack, Kieran. I'm not your responsibility. She held his gaze. And I'm certainly not your prisoner, no matter how gilded this cage feels. He flinched as if she'd struck him. That's not... I never meant... I know. She softened her voice. But you heard what he said. If I don't go willingly, they'll send enforcers. People will get hurt. And I'll still end up in council custody, but as a prisoner instead of a cooperative witness. I can protect you. For how long, you can't leave Shadowmere. You can't call in allies because you have no pack. You're powerful, yes, but you're one wolf against an entire political system. She gripped his hands, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. Let me do this. Let me go verify my bloodline. Buy us time to figure out what's really happening here. You'll be walking into enemy territory. Maybe, or maybe Thorne is telling the truth. Maybe he really does want to prevent conflict. She paused. There was something in his eyes when he talked about Garrison. Something that didn't match the typical Blackwater reputation. You're too trusting. And you're too paranoid. She squeezed his hands. 7 days, Kieran. That's what he offered. Let me use those 7 days to learn what the modern wolf world looks like, what politics are in play, what we're really up against. Then I'll come back and we'll make decisions together. With information instead of assumptions. He stared at her, and she could see the war raging behind his eyes. Everything in him wanted to refuse, to lock her in the sanctuary and dare anyone to try taking her. But there was something else there too. Something that recognized the wisdom in her words even if he hated them. If he hurts you, Kieran said softly, if any of them lay a hand on you in violence, I will burn their world to ash. Curse or no curse, immortality or no immortality, I will find a way. I know. And if you don't return in 7 days, I will, I promise. She smiled slightly. I still have 23 days left of my 30. I'm not walking away from this mystery unsolved. He pulled her forward suddenly, wrapping her in an embrace that stole her breath. He was cold, always so cold, but that current of warmth beneath his skin felt stronger now. His face buried in her hair, and she felt him inhale deeply, memorizing her scent. Come back, he whispered. Please come back. I will, she promised again. When they finally separated, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Mara felt her own throat tighten. This was insane. She barely knew this man, but already leaving him felt like tearing something vital out of her chest. They walked back to the courtyard together. Thorne waited with his guards, his expression carefully neutral. When he saw their joined hands, something flickered across his face too quickly to read. I'll go with you, Mara announced, voluntarily, 7 days for verification and council consultation. Then I return here regardless of what you find. Agreed. Thorne inclined his head. You have my word, Dr. Winters. No harm will come to you while under my protection. Your word means nothing, Kieran spat. Your family's word has meant nothing for a century. Then let me prove otherwise. Thorne met his gaze squarely. I'm not my grandfather Ashford, and neither are you required to be the same Alpha who lost everything. Maybe it's time we all learn to be something new. The words hung in the cold morning air. Mara looked between the two men, seeing the history and hatred that separated them, but also maybe the faintest possibility of something else. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps eventually understanding. She turned to Kieran one last time. 7 days. 23 days remaining after that, he countered. Don't forget. I won't. She walked to Thorne's side, and together they headed toward where their vehicle waited beyond the ruins. Mara looked back once, seeing Kieran's silhouette stark against the ancient stones, already looking like he belonged to another time. Her heart ached, but her mind was clear. She was making the right choice. The strategic choice. She just hoped it didn't turn out to be her last one. The council hall stood like a fortress carved from midnight stone. 7 banners hung from iron chains, each bearing the crest of an ancient pack. The air was thick with power, with the musk of dominant wolves who had ruled for centuries. This was not a place for the weak. This was not a place for humans. Mara stood in the center of the circular chamber, alone. The marble floor beneath her boots was polished black, reflecting the torchlight like dark water. Around her, rising in tiers like an arena, sat the 7 alphas of the Grand Council. Their eyes tracked her every movement, predators assessing prey. She kept her spine straight, her chin lifted. She would not bow. Not yet. Elder Corwin sat at the highest point, his silver hair catching the firelight. He was ancient, perhaps 75 years old, but his posture held the strength of granite. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. Neutral. That was the word Kieran had used. Elder Corwin follows the law, not politics. Pray he stays that way. To Corwin's right sat a woman with auburn hair twisted into an elaborate crown of braids. Alpha Morgana of the Crimson Veil Pack. Her lips curved in a smile that promised nothing good. To his left, a massive man with scars crossing his bare arms. Alpha Garrett of the Northern Ridge. He looked at Mara the way one might look at an insect, curious if it would survive being crushed. The other 4 alphas were variations of the same theme: power, dominance, ancient bloodlines that stretched back centuries. And here she stood, a human historian with nothing but a dead woman's face and dormant magic she barely understood. The gallery behind the council was packed. Wolves from every territory come to witness the trial, to see if the legend was true, if Shadowmere's Luna had truly returned. Among them, Mara spotted a flash of golden hair, Verity Crane. The woman sat in the front row of the gallery, draped in silk the color of moonlight. Beautiful. That was the only word for her. High cheekbones, perfect skin, eyes like polished amber. She wore her status-like armor, every piece of jewelry announcing her worth. Highborn, connected, desired. Verity's gaze locked with Mara's. The smile she offered was knife-sharp. Challenge accepted. Elder Corwin's voice cut through the murmurs. Silence! The chamber fell quiet instantly. Even the torches seemed to stop flickering. We are gathered to witness the trial of legitimacy, Corwin announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Mara Winters of Shadowmere claims descent from Luna Lorraine's bloodline. She claims the right to stand as Luna beside Alpha Kieran Ashford. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Such a claim has not been made in 100 years. The law is clear. Proof must be given. 3 stages: blood, combat, and bond. Failure in any stage results in immediate rejection and exile from all pact territories. Exile. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. For a human with no pack, no protection, exile meant slow death, starvation, or worse. Mara's hands remained steady at her sides. She had known the stakes before she walked through those doors. Does the claimant understand the terms? Corwin asked. I understand, Mara said. Her voice echoed in the cavernous space, smaller than his, but clear, unshaken. Does the claimant accept the risk? I accept. Alpha Morgana leaned forward, her smile widening. And where is your alpha, little scholar? Does Kieran Ashford not care enough to stand beside you? The words were designed to cut, to plant doubt. Mara felt the eyes of the gallery burning into her back, waiting for her response. Alpha Kieran cannot leave Shadowmere, Mara said evenly. The binding spell that has held him for 100 years does not permit it. He remains to guard our territory. How convenient, another alpha muttered. Garrett, the one with the scars. A Luna with no alpha present. Perhaps she invented this bloodline claim. Perhaps she is simply a desperate human seeking shelter. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Agreement, suspicion. Verity's voice rose above the noise, sweet as poisoned honey. Forgive me, Elder Corwin, but I must speak. She stood every movement graceful. I do not question the integrity of this trial, but I question the validity of the claimant herself. Corwin's expression remained neutral. Speak, Verity Crane of the Silver Moon Pack. This woman is human, Verity said, gesturing toward Mara with one elegant hand. She has no wolf, no shift, no connection to the spirit realm that defines us. How can she claim Luna status when she cannot even understand what it means to be one of us? More murmurs, louder now, emboldened. Mara felt the walls closing in, the weight of their judgment pressing down like a physical force. But she had not survived the ruins, the cold, the awakening of a ghost king to be defeated by words. I may be human now, Mara said, her voice cutting through the noise, but blood does not lie. I am here to prove what I carry, not what I lack. Verity's smile faltered for just a heartbeat, then returned colder. We shall see. Elder Corwin raised his hand. Silence fell again. The trial begins. Stage 1, blood. From the shadows behind the council, 2 attendants emerged. They carried between them a stone basin, ancient, and covered in runes that glowed faintly in the torchlight. The same runes Mara and O'Neill had seen on the bloodstone altar at Shadowmere. They placed the basin on the floor before her. The stone was black obsidian, polished smooth by centuries of use. Inside the basin was empty, except for a thin layer of silver dust that shimmered like starlight. Corwin stood descending the steps until he was level with Mara. Up close, she could see the depth of his age, the wisdom in his eyes, the weariness of someone who had seen too much. The blood trial is simple, he said quietly for her ears alone. You offer your blood to the sacred basin. If Luna Lorraine's magic recognizes you as her descendant, the runes will awaken. If not, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. He produced a small silver blade no longer than her palm. The edge caught the light sharp enough to slice shadow. Your left palm, he instructed, a cut from wrist to finger. It must be deep enough to fill the basin. Mara extended her left hand without hesitation. The blade was cold against her skin. She did not look away as Corwin drew it across her palm in one smooth motion. Pain, sharp and immediate. Blood welled up dark red, spilling over her hand in thick rivulets. She turned her palm downward, letting it drip into the basin. The first drop hit the silver dust. Nothing. The second drop. The third. Her blood pooled at the bottom of the basin, mixing with the dust, turning it crimson. Still nothing. Mara's heart began to pound. Had she been wrong? Had all of this been for nothing? Perhaps she is not, Verity began. The basin erupted in light. Not blue, not the cold lunar glow of Lorraine's magic. Violet, a deep, rich purple that blazed like amethyst fire. The runes along the basin's edge flared to life, each symbol burning with that same otherworldly light. The illumination spread, crawling up the stone, racing along invisible lines, until the entire floor of the chamber glowed. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Even the alphas leaned forward, shocked. The light swirled inside the basin, Mara's blood dancing with the silver dust in patterns that seemed almost alive. She felt it then, a warmth spreading from her bleeding palm up her arm into her chest. Not painful, not intrusive. It felt like recognition, like something long asleep finally opening its eyes. Elder Corwin stepped back, his expression unreadable. Violet, he murmured. Not lunar magic, earth magic, the magic of Isora's line. Impossible, Alpha Morgana breathed. Isora died 70 years ago. Her line was extinct. Clearly not, Corwin said. He looked at Mara with new eyes. Not hostile, but not friendly either. Calculating. Isora was Lorraine's twin sister. She escaped the Shadowmere massacre and went into hiding. If this woman carries Isora's magic, then she is indeed of the bloodline. The violet light began to fade slowly, reluctantly, as if unwilling to let go. When it finally died, the basin was empty again. The silver dust gone, absorbed into the stone. Mara's palm still bled, the cut deep and throbbing. She pressed her other hand against it, feeling the slick warmth of her own blood, but she did not look away from the council. Stage 1 is complete, Corwin announced. The bloodline is confirmed. Mara Winters is a descendant of Luna Lorraine through Isora's line. Relief should have flooded her. Instead, Mara felt only wariness. One stage passed, 2 remained, and Verity's expression had shifted from smug satisfaction to cold calculation. This was not over. We proceed to stage 2, Corwin continued, returning to his seat. The trial of combat. Aluna must be able to defend her pack, protect her territory, and Make strategic decisions under pressure. The claimant will face a challenge. Verity rose again. Of course she did. I volunteer to be her opponent, Verity said, her voice ringing with false humility. I wish only to ensure that our future Luna is worthy of the title. The other Alphas exchanged glances. Alpha Garrett nodded slowly. Acceptable. Verity Crane is a trained warrior from a respected bloodline. She will provide an adequate test. Adequate? Mara wanted to laugh. Verity was highborn wolf-trained and clearly desperate to see Mara fail. This was not adequate. This was a death sentence, but she could not refuse. Refusal meant forfeit. I accept, Mara said. Verity's smile was all teeth. Wonderful. The attendants cleared the center of the chamber, removing the basin, creating a wide circle of empty space. The gallery leaned forward, eager for blood, for entertainment. The Alphas settled back in their seats, ready to watch. Mara's palm still bled. She tore a strip from the hem of her shirt, wrapping it tightly around the wound. The fabric immediately soaked through, but it would hold. It had to. Verity stepped into the circle. She wore fighting leathers, now the silk gown discarded somewhere behind her. The transformation was startling. Gone was the delicate highborn lady. In her place stood a warrior lean and lethal, every muscle coiled and ready. Rules are simple, Elder Corwin called out. First blood submission or unconsciousness. No killing blows. No permanent maiming. This is a test of skill, not execution. Verity circled Mara slowly, her movements fluid as water. Tell me, little historian, she purred, her voice low enough that only Mara could hear. Have you ever been in a real fight, or do you just read about them in your dusty books? Mara said nothing. She turned to keeping Verity in her line of sight, watching the way the woman moved. Predator circles. Looking for weakness. Testing for fear. I'll make this quick, Verity continued. You're human, you're fragile, and you're about to learn why humans don't belong in our world. She struck. Fast. Inhumanly fast. Her fist aimed for Mara's ribs, a blow designed to crack bone and steal breath. But Mara was not there when the strike landed. She had dropped low, rolling to the side, using Verity's momentum against her. It was a move from her research from studying ancient combat techniques. Theory becoming practice. Survival becoming instinct. Verity snarled, spinning to follow. She came again, faster this time, a flurry of strikes that blurred the air. Mara blocked what she could absorb, what she could not. Pain exploded in her shoulder, her ribs, her thigh. Each hit a hammer blow. She could not match Verity's speed. She could not match her strength. But she had something Verity did not expect. She had survived alone in a frozen ruin. She had faced down a ghost king and chosen to stand her ground. She had learned long ago that the strongest weapon was not muscle. It was mind. Verity lunged again, overconfident, now expecting Mara to break. Instead, Mara sidestepped and struck. Not with her fist, with her wrapped palm. She slammed her hand against the pressure point, just below Verity's ribs, the spot where nerve clusters bunched together like tangled wire. Verity's breath left her in a strangled gasp. She stumbled, just for a second, just long enough. Mara swept her leg, hooking Verity's ankle, pulling. The highborn wolf went down hard, her back hitting the marble with a crack that echoed. Before she could recover, Mara was on top of her knee, pressed to Verity's chest, her bleeding palm hovering over Verity's throat. Yield, Mara said quietly. The chamber was utterly silent. Verity's amber eyes blazed with rage and disbelief. You yield, Mara repeated, or I press harder and you pass out. Your choice. For a long, terrible moment, Verity did not move. Pride warring with reality. Then slowly she tapped the floor twice with her palm. The universal sign of submission. Mara stood immediately, stepping back, offering her hand to help Verity rise. Verity slapped the hand away, rolling to her feet with a snarl. This proves nothing. You got lucky. Stage 2 is complete. Elder Corwin's voice cut through before Verity could say more. The claimant has demonstrated strategic thinking and combat effectiveness. She passes. Mara's legs trembled. Adrenaline crash. Pain from the hits finally catching up to her. But she remained standing, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. 2 stages, 2 victories. 1 remained. Then the world tilted. It started as dizziness. A spinning in her head, subtle at first, then overwhelming. The torchlight blurred, doubled, became streaks of fire in her vision. Her knees buckled. She caught herself, on one hand, the other clutching her stomach as nausea rolled through her in violent waves. Poison. The realization came too late. Something in the water she had been offered before entering the chamber. Or the air. Or the Verity's smile. That knowing, satisfied smile as she watched Mara collapse. Is the claimant unwell? Alpha Morgana asked, her tone dripping false concern. Mara tried to stand. Her body would not obey. The marble floor was cold against her cheek. When had she fallen completely? Voices swirled above her, distant, distorted. Perhaps the human is not as strong as she pretends, someone said. Garrett, maybe. Or another. They all sounded the same now. Weakness, another voice agreed. The trial is forfeit if she cannot complete it. No, the words screamed in Mara's mind but would not leave her lips. She dragged herself onto her hands and knees, every movement agony. Her vision swam, her stomach heaved, but she forced it down. Forced everything down except the single burning need to not fail. Not here. Not like this. Through the haze, she saw boots. Expensive leather polished to a shine. Verity standing over her. Such a shame, Verity murmured, just loud enough for Mara to hear. I had hoped you would last longer. The poison. It had been Verity. Of course it had. Mara's fingers found the wrapped cut on her palm. The blood had soaked through, still wet, still warm. She pressed her hand flat against the marble floor, leaving a crimson print. Then another. She crawled forward, each movement a victory of will over body, leaving a trail of bloody handprints behind her. The gallery was silent now, watching, waiting for her to give up, to forfeit. She would not. Her vision cleared slightly, enough to see the chamber's edge where the attendants kept supplies. Medicinal herbs. She had seen them earlier, cataloged them automatically. Historians have it. Among them would be yarrow or perhaps white willow bark, something to counteract toxins. She dragged herself to the edge, ignored the gasps from the gallery, ignored Verity's delighted laughter, ignored everything except the small leather pouch on the supply table. Her fingers closed around it, pulled it down. Inside, dried leaves. She recognized the scent immediately. Activated charcoal and mint, used to absorb poisons. The attendants would have it on hand for emergencies. She crammed the leaves into her mouth, chewed, swallowed. The taste was bitter as ash, but almost immediately the spinning slowed. Her stomach settled. The fog in her mind began to clear. Mara stood, slowly, unsteadily, but she stood. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Even the alphas leaned forward, surprised. Impressive, Elder Corwin said. His tone had changed. Respect colored the edges of it. The claimant not only survives poison, but identifies and treats it herself. Knowledge is Aluna's greatest weapon. Mara turned to face Verity. The highborn wolf's smile had vanished, replaced by barely concealed fury. Did you think, Mara said, her voice rough but steady, that I spent years studying pack history without learning about their medicines, their poisons? She took a step toward Verity. You made one mistake. You assumed I was weak because I'm human. But weakness is not about what you are. It's about what you know. And I know exactly what you did. Prove it, Verity spat. You have no evidence. Don't I? Mara pulled the wrapped cloth from her palm, revealing the deep cut. It had stopped bleeding, the edges beginning to knit together, faster than any human wound should heal. Violet magic, she said softly, watching her own skin with wonder. Earth magic. It protects against toxins from the earth, including the nightshade compound you slipped into my water. The silence that followed was absolute. Nightshade, Alpha Morgana repeated, her voice dangerous. A slow poison designed to weaken without killing. Verity Crane, do you deny this accusation? Verity's face was pale, trapped. She cannot prove. She need not prove it, Corwin interrupted. The evidence is before us all. The claimant was poisoned. She survived through her own knowledge in the awakening of her magic. And more importantly, his gaze fixed on Verity like a spear point. Attempted murder during a council trial is grounds for immediate exile. No. Verity lunged not toward the alphas but toward Mara. Her hand flew to her belt, producing a silver blade identical to the one used for the blood trial. If I'm exiled anyway, I'll finish this. She was fast, but Mara was ready. The violet light that had glowed in the basin now blazed in Mara's eyes. She threw out her hand palm forward and the earth responded. Roots burst from between the marble tiles, thick as pythons, wrapping around Verity's legs, her arms, her chest. They lifted her off the ground, held her suspended, struggling. Mara did not remember deciding to do it. The magic simply answered, like calling to like, earth to earth. Enough, she said. The roots tightened. Verity's blade clattered to the floor. I could crush you, Mara continued, her voice echoing with something ancient, something that was not entirely her own. The earth would swallow you whole and no one would find the bones, but I am not you. I am not cruel. I am Luna of Shadowmere, and I choose mercy. The roots lowered Verity to the ground, released her, and retreated back into the stone as if they had never been. Verity collapsed, gasping, staring at Mara with open terror. Council, Mara said, turning to the 7 alphas. I have passed stage 1. I passed stage 2. I await stage 3. Elder Corwin stood slowly. For the first time since the trial began, he smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. Stage 3 cannot occur here. It requires the presence of both Luna and Alpha together at their territory. The bond test must be performed at Shadowmere. He descended the steps again, approaching Mara. When he stood before her, he inclined his head. Just slightly. Just enough. You have proven bloodline and worthiness. But before we proceed to stage 3, there is one final matter. He gestured, and the attendants brought forward a locked iron chest. When Corwin opened it, Mara's breath caught. Inside were documents. Dozens of them. Old parchment, yellowed with age, covered in dense handwriting and official seals. What is this? Mara whispered. Evidence, Corwin said quietly. Evidence that has been hidden for 100 years. Evidence of what truly happened at Shadowmere. Before she could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward. The boom echoed like thunder. Wood splintered. Iron hinges shrieked. Through the smoke and dust, a figure stepped into the council hall. Thorn Blackwater. The alpha of Iron Fang clan was tall, broad-shouldered, his face marked with old scars that spoke of battles won and lost. His eyes were storm gray, cold as winter rain. He wore black from head to toe, and behind him came 24 wolves armed and ready. Elder Corwin, Thorn said, his voice carrying the weight of command. I believe you have something that belongs to my territory. The council alphas rose as one power flooding the chamber. The air grew thick with dominance, with the presence of ancient bloodlines bristling against the intruder. You dare enter this hall armed during a trial, Alpha Garrett snarled. That is an act of war, Blackwater. Then consider it war, Thorn replied calmly. He looked past the council, his gaze finding Mara. Dr. Winters, I suggest you come with me. Now. Mara did not move. I'm not going anywhere with you. You misunderstand. This is not a request. Thorn's wolves spread out, surrounding the chamber's perimeter. Escape routes blocked. My grandfather was the Alpha who led the Shadowmere massacre. Before he died, he sealed certain documents in a vault. Documents that could only be opened with Luna Lorrain's bloodline. He gestured to the chest in Corwin's hands. Those documents, I believe, stolen from Iron Fang territory 6 months ago. Corwin's expression remained neutral. If you have a complaint about stolen property, file a formal grievance. This is a trial, not a negotiation. Then let me simplify matters. Thorn's hand moved to his belt. Not a weapon, a vial. Glass filled with dark red liquid. I have something your precious Luna needs. The antidote. Mara's blood went cold. What did the Did you think simple activated charcoal would cure nightshade poisoning? Thorn asked. His smile was thin, sharp. It slows the poison, buys time. But without the full antidote, you have perhaps 6 hours before your organs begin to fail. He held up the vial, let the torchlight catch the liquid inside. This contains the true cure. Come with me, and I'll give it to you. Refuse and you die on this marble floor. The chamber erupted. Alphas shouting, wolves growling, Verity screaming denials that no one believed. Through it all, Mara stood frozen. 6 hours. She could feel it now underneath the temporary relief, a wrongness spreading through her blood, a countdown she could not stop. Why? She demanded. Why do you want me? Thorn's expression shifted. For just a moment, the cold mask cracked, revealing something underneath. Desperation. Because you can unlock what my grandfather hid. Because those documents contain evidence that will destroy the council's lies about Shadowmere. Because I need to clear my family's name, and you're the only key I have. Thorn Blackwater, Elder Corwin said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. You are under arrest for intrusion, for coercion, for telling the truth. Thorn interrupted. He looked directly at Corwin. Tell her, Elder. Tell her what's really in that chest. Tell her why you've kept it locked away instead of presenting it as evidence. Corwin's face remained impassive, but he did not answer. That silence was answer enough. Mara's mind raced, the poison in her blood, the documents in Corwin's hands, Thorn's desperate plea masked as a threat. Nothing was as it seemed, nothing was simple. If she went with Thorn, she would survive but lose the trial. If she stayed, she might die before stage 3 could even begin. Mara Winters, Thorn's voice softened. I know what you've been through. I know you've spent your entire career searching for the truth about Shadowmere. I'm offering you that truth, all of it. Every document, every testimony, every buried secret. He extended his hand. Come with me. Save yourself. Learn what really happened. Then decide who deserves your loyalty. Behind her, the council chamber felt like a trap closing. Ahead, Thorn offered poison in the shape of salvation. She looked down at her palm. The cut had closed completely, leaving only a thin silver scar. Violet magic healing her from within. But not fast enough. Not if Thorn was telling the truth about the nightshade. If I go with you, Mara said slowly, you'll give me the antidote immediately, and you'll let me see those documents. All of them. You have my word as Alpha. And when I'm done reading, you'll let me leave. No chains, no prison, no forced alliance. Thorn hesitated, then nodded once. You have 24 hours, read everything, then make your choice. If you still want to return to face stage 3, I will personally escort you back to Shadowmere. It was a terrible gamble, but it was the only gamble she had. Mara turned to Elder Corwin. I'm going with him. If you leave this chamber, Corwin warned, you forfeit the trial. There will be no stage 3, no Luna status, no gim. Then delay it, Mara interrupted. 24 hours. I'll return before then. And if you don't, Alpha Morgana demanded. Mara met her gaze. Then I was never worthy to begin with. She walked toward Thorn. His wolves parted, creating a path. When she reached him, he handed her the vial immediately. True to his word. Drink it, he said. Mara uncorked the vial, sniffed. Yarrow and bloodroot mixed with something metallic. Silver dust, probably. Standard antidote for nightshade-based poisons. She drank it in one swallow. The relief was immediate. The wrongness in her blood dissipated like smoke and wind. Her vision sharpened. Her strength returned. Thank you, she said quietly. Thorn nodded. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen what's in the vault. They left together, Thorn's wolves forming a protective circle around them. As they passed through the shattered doors, Mara looked back once. Elder Corwin still held the iron chest. His expression was unreadable. Verity lay on the floor defeated. The other alphas watched with various degrees of anger and calculation. And somewhere miles away in a crumbling ruin, Kieran Ashford felt the bond flicker and strain as Mara moved further from Shadowmere territory. The trial was not over. If anything, it had only just begun. So, Iron Fang territory sprawled across the northern mountains, all jagged cliffs and ancient pine forests. Thorn's fortress was carved into the mountainside itself, stone merging with a living rock, as if the earth had grown the structure organically. It was beautiful in a harsh way, unforgiving, like its alpha. They descended into the lower levels past guards who watched Mara with curious eyes, past training rooms where young wolves sparred, past a great hall that echoed with emptiness. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The stone walls glistened with moisture. The torches burned with blue-tinged flames. Finally, Thorn stopped before a metal door covered in runes. Not just any runes, binding runes, sealing magic. My grandfather was paranoid, Thorn said, producing a key from inside his jacket. He trusted no one, not even his own family. He unlocked 3 separate mechanisms, each one clicking open with ominous finality. When he died, he left us with this vault and a riddle. Only Luna Lorraine's bloodline can open what lies within. For 100 years, we've been locked out of our own history. He pushed the door open. Inside was a small chamber walls lined with shelves, and on those shelves sat hundreds of documents. Letters, journals, testimonies, maps, photographs from the early days when cameras first captured wolf gatherings. And in the center of the room, on a pedestal of black stone, sat a single book bound in silver and midnight blue. That, Thorn said, pointing to the book, requires your blood to open, just a drop on the cover. But be warned, his expression turned grave. Once you read it, you cannot unread it. The truth is rarely kind. Mara approached the book slowly. Up close, she could see the runes carved into the cover. Ancient script, Lorraine's handwriting. She recognized it from the journal fragments at Shadowmere. She pressed her scarred palm against the cover. The runes blazed violet. The book opened. Mara began to read. Hours passed. Thorn left her alone, posted guards outside, but gave her space. Mara read until her eyes burned, until her throat was raw from holding back tears, until the truth of what happened at Shadowmere 100 years ago became undeniable. It was not a war. It was a land grab. The Council had wanted Shadowmere's territory for its rich mineral deposits. Silver veins ran beneath the ruins, enough to make any pack wealthy for generations. But Kieran Ashford refused to sell, refused to negotiate. His pack was thriving. They needed nothing from the outside world. So the Council manufactured a threat. They spread rumors that Lorraine's moon magic was dangerous, that she was creating an army, that Shadowmere planned to conquer neighboring territories. None of it was true. But fear is a powerful weapon. They sent Iron Fang Clan to handle the situation. Thorn's grandfather, Alpha Garrison Blackwater, led the attack. But the documents revealed something the history books had never mentioned. Garrison tried to refuse. He had written letters to the council pleading for more time for diplomatic solutions. The council responded with threats. Comply, or Iron Fang itself would be destroyed. Garrison had a choice: murder Shadowmere or watch his own pack burn. He chose his pack, as any alpha would. The massacre happened on the winter solstice. Garrison's forces surrounded Shadowmere at dawn. They gave no warning, no chance to surrender. They burned everything, killed everyone. But they were supposed to capture Lorraine alive. Council's orders. They wanted her. Magic wanted to study it, harness it. Garrison refused that part. He had already committed one atrocity. He would not add torture to his sins. When he found Lorraine at the altar, he offered her a choice: flee or fight. She chose to bind her magic to the land itself, chose to curse Kieran with immortality so he would remain, would guard their home, would wait for justice. And then she died, not by Garrison's hand, by her own magic. The explosion of power had destroyed half the attacking force. Garrison himself had barely survived, losing his left arm and most of his face. He lived another 40 years in agony, physical and emotional, carrying the weight of what he had done. Before he died, he sealed these documents, left instructions for his descendants. Find Lorraine's bloodline. Give them the truth. Let them decide what justice looks like. Mara closed the book with trembling hands. The truth was not black and white. It was gray and red and soaked in regret. Garrison had been a monster, but he had also been a father trying to save his children. The council had been the true architects of evil. And Kieran had spent 100 years hating the wrong people. Now you understand, Thorn's voice came from the doorway. She had not heard him enter. My family's legacy is blood, but we were pawns, not masters. The council used us. Then they buried the evidence and rewrote history. Mara looked at him, really looked at him. She saw Garrison's features in his face. The same storm gray eyes, the same hard jaw. But where Garrison had been broken by guilt, Thorn carried determination. What do you want from me? Mara asked. Help me expose them, Thorn said. Bring these documents to light. Stand at the next council meeting and tell the world what really happened. Clear my family's name. And if I do that, the council will have me killed. Probably, Thorn agreed. But you'll die knowing you told the truth. Isn't that what historians live for? Mara stood, leaving the book on its pedestal. I won't die for this, but I will fight for it. She met Thorn's gaze. I'll help you expose the council, but on my terms, at my timing, after I complete stage 3 and become Luna officially. You still want to finish the trial? Thorn looked incredulous. After everything you've learned, especially because of what I've learned, Kieran needs to know the truth, and he needs to hear it from me as his equal, as his Luna, not as a human historian who stumbled into his life. She walked toward the door. Take me back to Shadowmere, now. Thorn's smile was slow and genuine. You're fiercer than you look, Dr. Winters. I've had a rough few days. They returned to the surface, but as they prepared to leave, alarms rang through the fortress. Wolves scattered, running toward the eastern wall. Shouts echoed down the corridors. What's happening? Mara demanded. Thorn's expression turned grim. Someone's attacking the fortress. They ran. The eastern wall was chaos. Wolves in combat stances, claws out, teeth bared. And beyond the wall, visible through the arrow slits, was a force of at least 60 wolves bearing council colors. Leading them was Verity Crane. She stood at the forefront, her face twisted with rage. Thorn Blackwater, you have kidnapped a council claimant and interfered with a sacred trial. Surrender her immediately or face annihilation. She came willingly, Thorn shouted back. Lies. We demand her release. Mara stepped forward, climbing the stairs to the top of the wall. She looked down at Verity and the assembled forces. I'm fine. I'm here by choice. Stand down. You've been brainwashed, Verity snarled. Poisoned. Coerced. The council has voted. Thorn Blackwater is under arrest. You will be taken into protective custody until stage 3. Protective custody. Prison, in other words. They would never let her complete the trial. They would lock her away, neutralize her, make sure the truth in that vault stayed buried. No, Mara said simply. This is not a negotiation. The council forces surged forward. Thorn's wolves braced for impact. Battle was seconds away. And then the world went dark. Not naturally, not a cloud covering the sun. This was something else. A shadow that fell across the entire battlefield like a massive hand blotting out the light. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in an instant. Frost formed on the ground, on the walls, on the wolves themselves. A howl split the air, ancient and terrible. The sound of a king who had waited 100 years and would wait no longer. From the tree line, a figure emerged. Kieran Ashford had left Shadowmere. He moved through the council forces like a force of nature. Not running, walking. But every step radiated power, radiated dominance so overwhelming that wolves twice his size stumbled back whimpering, unable to meet his gaze. He had aged. The hour he could spend outside his territory had cost him years. His hair was shot through with silver now. Lines marked his face deep as scars, but his eyes still burned with that same frozen fire. Mara, he said, just her name, just once. She climbed down from the wall, ran to him, met him halfway between the two forces. Kieran, you shouldn't have. I felt the bond strain, he interrupted. His hand came up, cupping her face thumb, brushing her cheek. I felt you in pain, in danger. Did you think I would stay home? The curse is meaningless if you're gone. He looked past her at the council forces at Verity. Anyone who touches her answers to me. You're dying, Mara whispered, seeing the gray spreading through his hair, the deepening lines that told the curse was taking for his disobedience. Every moment you're away from Shadowmere is killing you. Then we should hurry. He turned to Thorn. I assume you have the documents. Thorn nodded slowly. I've known for 60 years that Garrison was forced into it. Took me that long to track down the proof. You just saved me the last 40. Kieran's smile was sharp. Help us get back to Shadowmere, and you'll have your alliance. Iron Fang and Shadowmere united. You'd forgive. I'd stop wasting time on the past and start fixing the future. Are you with us or against us? Thorn made his decision in a heartbeat. With you. He turned to his wolves. Stand down. Let them pass. Verity screamed in rage. Traitor, the council will destroy you. Let them try, Thorn said calmly. He looked at his wolves, at the loyalty in their eyes. We have suffered under council corruption for generations. No more. Today Iron Fang stands with Shadowmere. Today we choose truth. His wolves howled in agreement. The sound was deafening, defiant, a declaration of war wrapped in harmony. The council forces retreated, taking Verity with them, her screams fading into the distance. Kieran sagged. Mara caught him, supporting his weight. He was heavier than he looked, solid muscle and bone, but she held him upright. We need to get you home, now. Stage 3, Kieran murmured. We need to complete Stage 3. We will, I promise, just hold on. They ran. Thorn sent 24 wolves as escort. They moved fast, covering the distance between Iron Fang territory and Shadowmere in hours that should have taken days. Kieran's condition worsened with every mile. By the time they crossed into Shadowmere lands, he could barely walk. But the moment his boots touched his own soil, the aging stopped. His hair remained silver-shod, his face remained lined, but the death spiral ceased. The curse tightened its grip, pulling him home, anchoring him once more. The altar, Kieran gasped. We completed there, where it all began. They made their way through the ruins, past the crumbling walls, past the Luna's sanctuary to the bloodstone altar. The stone was dark, inert, waiting. Elder Corwin was already there. The old Alpha stood beside the altar, his expression weary but determined. I was hoping you'd both survive, he said. I did not approve of the council's methods, but I could not stop them alone. You're here to witness Stage 3, Mara asked. I'm here to ensure it's completed, and to stand with you when you expose the council's sins. He looked at Kieran. Alpha Ashford, you have aged considerably. The curse is failing. Good, Kieran said. I'm tired of immortality. Corwin smiled faintly. Then let's finish this. He gestured to the altar. Stage 3, the bond test. Luna and Alpha must complete the mate bond fully. Blood vow and mark. Do you both consent? I consent, Kieran said. Mara took a breath. This was it. The final choice. The point of no return. Once the bond was complete, she would be tied to Shadowmere forever. Tied to Kieran forever. No more running, no more freedom. But freedom without purpose was just loneliness with better marketing. I consent, she said. Corwin produced the silver blade used in the blood trial. Your palms, Kieran first. Kieran held out his hand. Corwin cut deep from wrist to fingertip. Blood welled up dark and rich. Then Mara's turn, the same cut mirroring his. Join hands over the altar, Corwin instructed. Their palms met, blood mixed flowing over their fingers, dripping onto the bloodstone. The moment their blood touched the stone, the entire altar erupted. Not just violet, not just blue, every color imaginable swirling together, rising in a column of light that pierced the sky. The runes blazed, the ground shook, and magic raw, ancient, overwhelming poured through both of them. Mara felt it slam into her. Kieran's pain, his loneliness, his century of waiting. But underneath all that, deeper than the curse, was love, pure and unshakable. Not for Lorraine, for her, for Mara, for the woman who had chosen to stand beside him even knowing the cost. And he felt her in return. Her determination, her courage, her refusal to break even when everything pushed her down. Her mind sharp as any blade, her heart stronger than any wolf. They were not just bonded, they were merged. Two souls recognizing each other across the void, choosing each other despite every reason not to. The vow, Corwin prompted. Kieran spoke first, his voice rough but clear. I, Kieran Ashford Alpha of Shadowmere, claim you, Mara Winters, as my Luna, my mate, my equal. I vow to protect you, stand with you, and honor your strength as I honor my own. From this moment until the last star fades. Mara's voice was steady. I, Mara Winters, a Luna of Shadowmere, claim you, Kieran Ashford, as my Alpha, my mate, my equal. I vow to stand with you, fight beside you, and share your burdens as you share mine. From this moment until the last star fades. The mark, Corwin said. This was the part that would hurt. The permanent claim, the visible proof of bond. Kieran leaned in his teeth, grazing the junction of Mara's neck and shoulder. She tilted her head, offering access, and he bit. Not hard enough to tear, but deep enough to scar. The pain was sharp and immediate, followed by a rush of heat, of pleasure, of rightness. Then it was her turn. She had no wolf teeth. But the violet magic responded. Her canines elongated, sharpened just for this moment. She bit his neck, felt his blood on her tongue, felt him shudder and grip her tighter. When they pulled apart, both bore matching marks, silver scars that would never fade, the eternal proof of their choice. The light from the altar began to fade. The magic settled, but Mara felt different, stronger. Her senses had sharpened. She could hear Thorn's wolves at the territory border, could smell the coming rain, could feel the very heartbeat of Shadowmere itself. It's done, Corwin said quietly. Mara Winters is now Luna of Shadowmere, recognized by ancient law and witnessed by the council. No one can dispute it. Kieran pulled Mara close, resting his forehead against hers. Thank you, he whispered, for choosing this, for choosing me. I'd choose you again, she whispered back. Every time. They stood there, wrapped in each other as the first snow of winter began to fall. They shifted back to human form as dawn approached, their bodies trembling from the ritual's intensity. The white silk cords still bound their wrists together, tradition held. It shouldn't be removed for 3 days, a symbol of permanence. Mara found oddly comforting. She could feel Kieran through the bond now layered beneath her own emotions. Relief, wonder, desire, and something fragile and new, the slow unfurling of joy he'd forgotten existed. Elder Corwin cleared his throat softly. The coronation ceremony should wait for full daylight. Let the pack gather properly. Give yourselves time to... He paused, a knowing smile crinkling his weathered face. Rest. Kieran's arm tightened around Mara's waist. Agreed. Thorn, your wolves are welcome to use the Eastern Lodge. We'll convene at noon. As the gathered witnesses dispersed, Kieran led Mara back through the ruins. The sky was lightening to pearl gray, and in that soft pre-dawn glow, Shadowmere looked different. Not broken, but sleeping, waiting to wake. You're different, Mara said quietly, studying his profile. The silver threading his hair caught the early light. New lines framed his eyes. He'd paid a price for leaving his territory, but the ghost-like quality was gone. He looked alive. I can feel time again, Kieran said, wonder in his voice. The curse is still there, but it's diluted, shared between us. I'm aging, Mara, slowly but truly aging. Does that frighten you? He stopped walking, turned to face her. His free hand came up to cup her cheek. Frightened me after 100 years frozen in time. His laugh was soft, almost disbelieving. It's the most beautiful thing I've felt since the day Lorraine died. The mention of his first mate's name didn't sting the way Mara had expected. Through the bond, she felt only gratitude for Lorraine's sacrifice for the magic that had kept him alive long enough to find her. She would have liked you, Kieran said, as if reading her thoughts. Perhaps he was. You have her fierce heart, but your own mind. Your own fire. They reached the Alpha's lodge as the sun broke over the mountains. Inside, someone, Rhiannon, probably had prepared the chambers. Fresh furs covered the massive bed. Candles flickered on every surface. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, filling the room with golden warmth. The door closed behind them with a soft thud. Kieran turned to her, and in his winter-bright eyes, Mara saw a century of loneliness finally breaking. She reached up with her free hand, the one not bound to his, and traced the new lines time had carved into his face. You're still beautiful, she whispered. And you, he breathed, lowering his mouth to hers, are mine. The kiss was different from their first. Not desperate or questioning. This was claim and consent promise and possession wrapped in the absolute certainty of the bond. When he lifted her, carried her to the bed, with the silk cord still joining them, Mara's last coherent thought was that she had never felt more completely seen, more wholly chosen in her entire life. The sun was high when they finally emerged, both showered and dressed in clothes Rhiannon had left outside their door. Mara wore a simple dress of deep forest green, practical but elegant. Kieran had donned traditional alpha garb leather and fur with Shadowmere's crest embroidered over his heart. "Ready?" he asked, offering his hand. Mara laced her fingers through his. To be crowned in front of 100 witnesses, absolutely terrified. But yes, his laugh was warm. "Good. Fear keeps us honest. Arrogance gets us killed." They walked through the ruins, no through the settlement. In the bright noon sun, the changes were striking. The Eastern Lodge's roof had been completely repaired. The training grounds showed signs of recent use, packed earth, new weapon racks. And everywhere wolves moved with purpose, carrying supplies, tending small gardens, building. "They came overnight," Kieran said, following her gaze. "Word spread about the trial, about the bond. Rogues from 3 territories. They want to be part of something new." "How many?" "At 23 so far. It'll be more by week's end." A pack. She had a pack. The reality of it settled over Mara like a weight and a gift in equal measure. The great courtyard had been transformed. Banners bearing Shadowmere's crest, a howling wolf beneath a full moon, hung from repaired walls. Pack members lined the space in their best clothes, faces bright with hope that was almost painful to see. At the center, a platform had been erected. 2 thrones sat upon it, carved from ancient wood, their surfaces covered in the same spiraling runes that marked the bloodstone altar. Between them, on a cushion of midnight blue velvet, rested a crown. Mara's breath caught. The crown was delicate and deadly, at once a silver circlet set with opals that seemed to hold moonlight within their depths. Small enough to be elegant, strong enough to command respect. "Lorraine's crown," Kieran said softly. "I kept it safe." Waiting. Elder Corwin stood on the platform in full ceremonial robes, his silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. Beside him stood Thorn Blackwater, and to Mara's surprise, 5 other wolves in council colors, those who had stood with Corwin during the trial, who had witnessed her blood light the basin violet. "We gather under clear skies to witness history," Corwin announced, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. 100 years ago, Shadowmere fell. Today it rises. Not through conquest, not through violence, but through choice. He gestured to Mara. "Approach Luna Mara of Shadowmere." She climbed the steps alone, Kieran remaining at the base as tradition demanded. The platform felt higher than it looked. The crowd seemed larger. But when she reached Corwin and turned to face them, she found Rhiannon in the front row, grinning fiercely. Found the twin scouts, Finn and Ashton, both nodding encouragement. Found wolves she'd never met, refugees and rogues and survivors, all watching with something like reverence. "Kneel," Corwin said gently. The wood was hard against her knees, but Mara kept her spine straight, her head high. She was not submitting. She was accepting. There was a difference. Corwin lifted the crown from its cushion. In the sunlight, the opals blazed with inner fire. "By the old laws and the new," he intoned, "by blood and bond and choice, I name you Luna of Shadowmere. Protector of the pack, keeper of wisdom, equal to the Alpha in all things. Wear this crown not as a burden, but as a promise, to lead with compassion, to rule with justice, to remember that true strength lies not in dominance, but in the courage to stand for those who cannot stand for themselves." He placed the crown on her head. The world exploded in light, not violet this time, not blue. Gold, pure blazing gold that erupted from the crown and washed over the entire courtyard. Mara gasped as magic surged through her, not just her own bloodline power, but Lorraine's channeled through the crown itself. For a heartbeat, she felt Shadowmere's Luna as a presence, not a ghost, but a blessing, an approval that resonated in her very bones. The light faded, but its warmth remained, settling into Mara's skin, her blood, her soul. "Rise, Luna Mara," Corwin said, his voice thick with emotion, "and take your throne." She stood, turned, looked out at her pack. As one, they dropped to one knee. Rogues and refugees, Ironfang warriors and Shadowmere newcomers, even Thorn Blackwater, all bowing in acknowledgement. Kieran ascended the platform then. He took her hand, their mate marks visible to all, and raised it high. "This is my Luna." His alpha voice rang like thunder. "My equal, my mate, my queen. Let every wolf in every territory know Shadowmere has risen, and she is the reason why." The howls that answered were deafening. Joy and defiance and hope wrapped in lupine song. Mara threw back her head and howled with them, her wolf rising to the surface, adding her voice to the chorus. They sat on their thrones side by side, king and queen, Alpha and Luna, equals. There remains one piece of unfinished business, Corwin said when the howling subsided. He gestured and attendants brought forward the iron chest from the council hall. These documents belong not to the council nor to Iron Fang, but to Shadowmere. They contain the true history of the massacre, the truth that was buried. Thorn stepped forward. With Luna Mara's permission, I propose we hold a gathering, representatives from every pack. We present the evidence publicly. Let the wolves decide what justice looks like. Mara looked at Kieran. Through the bond, she felt his uncertainty warring with his desire for vengeance, for vindication. She squeezed his hand. We hold the gathering, she said clearly, in 1 month's time. Here on Shadowmere soil, any pack that wants to attend is welcome. Any pack that doesn't, she smiled sharp and cold, will mark themselves as complicit in the council's crimes. A summit of truth, Corwin said, approval in his eyes. So be it. I will send the summons today. The coronation feast lasted until sunset. Wolves from different territories mingled cautiously at first, then with growing warmth as food and drink and shared stories broke down old barriers. Mara moved through the crowd with Kieran at her side, learning names, listening to tales of how each wolf had found their way to Shadowmere. You're good at this, Kieran murmured during a brief moment alone. Better than I ever was. They don't just respect you, they trust you. That's because I was one of them, Mara said. An outsider, lost, looking for a place to belong. They know I understand. As twilight fell, Mara found herself in the Luna sanctuary seeking a moment of quiet. The room was different now, lived and functional. Her historical documents covered the work table. Medicinal herbs hung fresh from the rafters. It was both archive and infirmary scholars' study and healers' workshop. You've made it your own. Thorn's voice came from the doorway. She turned. The Iron Fang Alpha leaned against the frame, his expression contemplative. Thank you, she said, for everything. The antidote, the documents, your support. I should thank you. He entered, moving to Lorraine's portrait on the wall. My family has carried the weight of that massacre for a century, the shame of it. Now maybe we can start to heal. Garrison was a victim too, Mara said quietly, forced into an impossible choice. That doesn't excuse what he did, but it explains it. My father used to say Garrison died long before his body stopped breathing. The guild ate him alive. Thorn touched the portrait's frame gently. I never knew if redemption was possible, if we deserved it, but you gave us that chance. The summit will be hard. There will be wolves who don't want the truth exposed, who benefit from the old lies. Let them try to stop us. Thorn's smile was wolf-sharp. They'll learn that Shadowmere and Iron Fang together are a force they cannot ignore. After he left, Mara sat at the work table and opened Lorraine's journal to the last entry. The one written the night before the massacre. Tomorrow brings darkness. I have seen it in the moon's face, in the way the shadows gather at our borders. Kieran thinks I worry needlessly, but he forgets I see what others cannot. The threads of fate, the paths not taken, the futures that might be. I have done what I can. Isora is away with the children. The binding spell is prepared. If the worst comes, if I must choose between his life and mine, the choice is already made. He deserves to live. He deserves to love again, to lead again, to build something new from these ashes. To my sister, remember us. Teach your children who we were. Keep the truth alive in your blood. To my mate, do not mourn forever. I give you time, not chains. When you meet her, and you will, my love, I promise you will choose her freely. Not because she bears my face, but because she carries her own light. Promise me. The moon is rising. It's time. Mara closed the journal with trembling hands. Lorraine had known, had seen this future or something like it, had blessed it. Reading late, Kieran appeared in the doorway, backlit by torchlight. She knew, Mara said. Lorraine, she saw this coming. Not the specifics maybe, but the possibility. She wanted this for you, for us. Kieran crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. Then we honor her memory by living, fully, without guilt or ghosts. He kissed her forehead. Come to bed, my Luna. Tomorrow we have a pack of build and a summit to prepare for. Tonight we rest. They walked back to the lodge through Shadowmere's sleeping grounds, past the sentries who nodded respectfully, past the rebuilt walls that no longer felt like prison bars, but like protection. Home. That night, curled in Kieran's arms with the mate bond, humming contentedly between them, Mara dreamed not of the past, but of the future. Of a Shadowmere filled with laughter and light. Of children playing where ruins once crumbled. of a pack united not by blood, but by choice. Right. 1 month later, wolves from 17 territories arrived for the summit of truth. They filled Shadowmere's rebuilt Great Hall, packed shoulder to shoulder, while those who couldn't fit stood in the courtyard listening through open windows. Mara stood before them, all the moonstone crown gleaming on her head, and told them everything. She read from Garrison's journal, from the council's sealed orders, from testimony after testimony, proving that Shadowmere's fall had been not war, but murder, not justice, but greed disguised as politics. The chamber erupted, wolves howling for justice, for revenge, for blood. No, Mara's voice cut through the chaos. We do not answer evil with more evil. We answer it with truth, with consequences that fit the crime. Elder Corwin stood. I propose a full investigation. Every council member who participated in ordering the massacre will face trial. Their territories will be audited for the stolen silver wealth. Reparations will be paid to Shadowmere not in gold, but in service. Engineers to rebuild, teachers to educate, healers to train the next generation. The vote was overwhelming, 14 packs in favor, 3 abstaining, none opposed. It wasn't perfect justice. Some of those responsible were already dead. Others would argue and delay and fight. But it was a beginning, a crack in the old corrupt order that could never fully close again. Verity Crane was tried separately for attempted murder during a sacred trial. Found guilty, exiled to neutral territories with a brand marking her as oathbreaker. She left spitting curses, but she left. 6 months passed. Shadowmere's population grew to 112 wolves. The Great Lodge was fully restored. New buildings sprouted from cleared foundations, homes, workshops, a proper infirmary. Luna's Academy opened its doors with Mara teaching history 3 days a week and training healers the other 4. Kieran aged gracefully, silver spreading through his hair, new laugh lines appearing around his eyes. He looked younger now than he had as an immortal, a weight of endless years finally lifted. And Mara? Luna, you're glowing again. She looked up from her desk where she'd been cataloging new arrivals from the archives of Crimson Veil Pack. Rhiannon stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking. I'm not... Mara started, then caught sight of her reflection in the window. Faint violet light pulsed beneath her skin, barely visible, but definitely there. Oh, how long have you known? Rhiannon asked gently. 3 weeks, maybe 4. I wanted to be sure before I told Kieran. He's already insufferably protective. He's going to lose his mind. I know. Mara's hand drifted to her still flat stomach, but in the best way. She found him that evening in the training yard working with a group of adolescent wolves on proper defensive forms. He moved with unconscious grace, patient and thorough, the teacher as much as the warrior now. He sensed her approach, immediately turning with a smile that still made her heart skip. Finished early. I need to talk to you. Something in her tone made him dismiss the class instantly. They walked to their favorite spot, the overlook above the bloodstone altar, where the entire valley spread below them in shades of green and gold. What's wrong? Kieran asked, concern bleeding through the bond. Nothing's wrong. Mara took his hand, placed it flat against her stomach. Everything's right. Unexpectedly, terrifyingly right. He went very still. She felt the moment understanding hit his sharp intake of breath, his eyes widening, his hand pressing more firmly against her abdomen, as if he could feel the tiny spark of life already. Mara. Her name was prayer and question and wonder all at once. 8 weeks, best I can tell. Rhiannon's elder confirmed it this morning. The pregnancy is unusual. Half wolf, half human, complicated by the bond magic. But strong. Healthy. Kieran sank to his knees right there on the overlook, his arms wrapping around her waist, his face pressing against her stomach. His shoulders shook. She threaded her fingers through his silver-shot hair and held him while a century of loss finally fully broke open into joy. I never thought, he choked out. I never dared to hope. I know, she whispered. Neither did I. He looked up at her and his face was transformed. All the hard lines softened by wonder, by the fragile, terrifying perfection of this moment. We're going to have a child, he said, as if testing the words, seeing if they'd dissolve into dream. We're going to have a child, Mara confirmed. A little girl, according to the elder. She has your stubbornness and my overactive curiosity already, apparently. His laugh was joy-giving sound. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell on a quiet evening, covering Shadowmere in pristine white. Mara stood at the window of Luna's sanctuary, 4 months pregnant, now her belly just beginning to show, beneath the loose dress she wore. Behind her, the sanctuary buzzed with life. Young wolves studied at the tables. Rhiannon discussed patrol routes with the twins. Children played in the corner while their parents attended a healing class. The door opened, letting in cold air and Kieran Snow dusting his hair silver. He crossed to her immediately, arms wrapping around her from behind, one hand settling protectively over their daughter. "You should be resting," he murmured. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," she said, but leaned back into his embrace anyway. Your healer said I'm healthy and strong and that you need to stop hovering." His chuckle rumbled against her back. "Impossible. Hovering is now my primary function." They stood together watching snow fall over their kingdom, over ruins transformed into home, over a pack transformed into family. "Do you ever regret it?" Kieran asked quietly. "The choice you made, the freedom you gave up." Mara turned in his arms to face him. She reached up, tracing the lines time had carved into his face, lines that proved he was no longer frozen, no longer cursed, but alive and aging in hers. "Every morning I wake beside you," she said. "Every time a young wolf comes seeking knowledge. Every time I feel our daughter kick. Every time I run the borders in fur with our packs singing around us." She smiled. "No, I've never regretted it once. Even though you can't leave, even though you're bound here forever." "I'm not bound," she corrected gently. "I'm anchored. There's a difference. This place isn't a cage, Kieran. It's home. It's where I choose to build my life, with you. With our pack. With our daughter." He kissed her, then slow and deep and grateful. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. "Have you thought about names?" he asked. "One," Mara said, "if you're agreeable." "Tell me." "Isora." She watched his face carefully. "For the sister who saved a bloodline. For new beginnings. For hope that survived even when everything else burned." His eyes shone with unshed tears. "Isora," he repeated, tasting the name. "It's perfect." Outside the pack began their evening howl, a tradition that had started the night of the bonding and had continued every sunset since. A reminder that they were pack, they were family, they were home. Kieran and Mara joined the song, their voices intertwining Alpha and Luna in perfect harmony. And if Mara's hand rested over her daughter, if she imagined tiny ears already learning her pack's song well, that was between her and the future. Spring came with warmth and rain and new growth. Mara's pregnancy progressed without complication, though her wolf form grew increasingly uncomfortable until she could no longer shift at all. She didn't mind. There would be time for running after Isora was born. The summit's promised reparations began arriving. Engineers from Crimson Vale helped expand the settlement. Healers from Northern Ridge taught advanced medicine. Teachers from a dozen packs offered their skills, freely grateful to be part of something new. And the students came. Young wolves from territories where knowledge was hoarded, where females were undervalued, where questions were punished. They came to Shadowmere seeking Luna's academy, seeking the promise of education without politics of wisdom freely shared. Mara taught until the day her water broke during a lecture on proper archival techniques. Kieran, summoned by a panicked student, arrived to find his mate calmly finishing her point before agreeing that yes, perhaps now would be a good time to get to the infirmary. Isora Ashford was born at dawn on the spring equinox, small and perfect, and screaming with the indignation of someone who found the world insufficiently interesting. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's brown eyes no silver, no wolf gold, just warm human brown, that made Mara cry with relief and joy. "She's beautiful," Kieran breathed, holding his daughter with the careful reverence of someone who'd never thought to receive such a gift. "She's ours," Mara whispered. "Ours, and perfect, and absolutely ours." They named her in front of the pack. 3 days later, Kieran holding her high as Elder Corwin blessed her with salt and silver and moonwater. Isora Ashford, daughter of Shadowmere, heir to 2 bloodlines and answerable to her own heart. May you grow strong, may you grow wise. May you know love that endures beyond death and hope that survives beyond reason. The pack howled their welcome, and if baby Isora howled back, a surprisingly strong sound for such a tiny thing, well, she was packed too. 1 year to the day after Mara had first touched the bloodstone altar, they held a different kind of ceremony, a remembrance. The entire pack gathered at the altar as sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. Mara held Isora on her hip while Kieran lit candles, one for each wolf who had died in the massacre. 147 flames flickering in the twilight. "We gather to remember," Mara said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd, "to speak their names, to honor what was lost, and to promise that they did not die in vain." One by one, Kieran read the names from Lorraine's journal. Warriors and healers, teachers and scouts, children who had never grown old. The list took an hour to complete, and by the end there was not a dry eye in the clearing. Shadowmere fell, Kieran said when the last name had been spoken. But Shadowmere also endured. Because one Luna loved enough to sacrifice everything. Because one sister was brave enough to run. Because 4 generations later, a historian was stubborn enough to search for truth. He looked at Mara, at their daughter, at the pack spread around them like family. We are their legacy. We are their promise kept. And we will make sure they are never forgotten. The howl that rose was not mournful, it was triumphant. A declaration that love and hope and truth were stronger than death, than time, than all the forces that tried to break them. Mara tipped her head back and howled with them, Isora adding her own tiny voice to the chorus. And if the wind carried their song across territories, if wolves in distant lands heard it and wondered if the old corrupt council members felt a chill of fear, good. Let them know, let them all know. Shadowmere had risen, and it would never fall again. Epilogue. 10 years later, a young girl with dark hair and brown eyes stood before the bloodstone altar, her hand hovering over the carved runes. Mama says you're magic, she told the stone seriously, that you brought her and Papa together, that you kept the pack alive even when everyone thought it was dead. The altar, as always, was silent. I'm going to be Luna someday, Isora continued, not because I have to, because I choose to, like Mama did, like Grandmother Lorraine did, like great-great-great-grandmother Isora did. We're all brave. We all choose love over fear. She pressed her palm flat against the stone. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then violet light blazed to life, swirling with gold, with blue, with every color of magic that had ever blessed this land. The runes sang, the earth trembled, and in the ruins-turned kingdom of Shadowmere, a new story began. Not an ending, a continuation. Forever and always until the last star faded from the sky.